This podcast is brought to you by Gridiron Heroics Media.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Welcome one and all to the Gridiron Heroics Football Show. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean. And we have a heck of a show for you today. It's the biggest Sunday stream we've ever done. And to kick things off, as usual, we have Kyle Nishida and Brison Owens to pick all the games with us for Sunday. But today we also have Kyron Samuels, who you all know as former D1 and AFL offensive lineman, and of course, my co-host for the Monday recap segment. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm coming off a pretty good week last week, and hopefully I can continue that run, even though this is a much more difficult week.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well too. Just had a pretty rough week last week. It was not my week last week, but I got off to a good start this one with the Titans game. So hopefully this one can go better.
Doing pretty good as well. It looks like it's a lot of equal matchups this week, which always leads me to roll with the defenses. So that's probably where I'll probably lean heavy this week.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, Kyle, you did quite well. You won the week comfortably and maintained your lead. We'll talk about that here at the end, though. So the rest of the show, we have two guests for a Sunday night football preview between the AFC West division, and then we have two guests for a Monday night football preview in the NFC West division. We have Gavino Borquez, the managing editor for Chargers Wire, and Charles Goldman for the managing editor of Chiefs Wire. So they're going to come on and give us different perspectives for SNF. And then we have Kyle Madson of Niners Wire and Jess Root of Cards Wire for the Monday night preview as well. So big show. We got to get through the first hour, and here we go. All right. First up, we have the New England Patriots hosting the New York Jets. Oh, first, of course, I have to give a big shout out to Noah Ashley, our producer. He is extremely helpful. I just want to say I did a show without him last week, and it not go nearly as smoothly as it has been lately. And we got through it. But I appreciate him as well. You can find him on Twitter at NoAshtraySports. All right, New England Patriots at the New York Jets at the New England Patriots. Jets are plus 3.5 in this game, so I think the wrong team is favored in this game. That's just my opinion. I know that they go off a lot of historical data, plus the Jets laid a little bit of an egg, at least Zach Wilson did last time they matched up, but the Jets are just playing too well. The defense is too good, and I see a path for them to win. It's an uphill battle for the Patriots. Obviously, I'll do the official pick at the end, but Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, this is an interesting line. Obviously, with it being 3.5, they're giving the 3 points to New England because they're at home. I'm going to go with the Patriots minus 3.5 here. It is kind of, I think the fact that the Jets are coming off an extra week of preparation for the Patriots will help a lot. However, this is just the one thing that always happens when Bill Belichick faces a young quarterback. He has a way of making the game ugly. He has a way of making that quarterback struggle. And I realize this is just it's a one game scenario, but let's just put it here. The game total is under 40. And in those scenarios, Belichick has covered the spread almost 74% of the time. So a 3.5 point spread, I'm going to take the Patriots here, even though I do believe the Jets are playing better.
I'm going to take the Jets in this game. These are two very evenly matched teams. They play very similar brands of football. Both play great defenses. Both run the football very effectively. And neither team lets their quarterback explore too much out of their game. They kind of know what their quarterbacks are at this point in their careers, and they really try to play to their strengths on offense. The one big wild card in this game, like Kyle said, is the fact that Bill Belichick, especially at home against young quarterbacks, is lethal. He knows how to make the game extremely hard for young quarterbacks. I do think when they're this evenly matched, though, I will take the more talented quarterback with the better weapons, and that belongs to the Jets. Another interesting note, the Jets are 4-0 on the road this year. I don't think this Jets team is very phased by playing on the road, so I think that's going to play into their factor as well. So I've got the Jets covering and possibly coming away with a win.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Kyron. I got two.
No,
So I got right into my normal rhythm.
no. I think I'm just going to roll with the Patriots here. Not for any other reason than they've won 4 out of their last 5. They're finding ways. When you find ways and you're a Belichick coach team, like you said, you got a young quarterback coming in. Just defense, we all know how good they are. But it's hard to go into Foxborough and win. It's hard to take advantage of what the Patriots do defensively because there is nothing. And then they force you to make mistakes. And if we learn from history, Belichick is going to force the young quarterback to make mistakes. And I think that'll happen before you get mistakes on the other side. Ramondre Stevenson's running the ball too well right now. They're finding their rhythm and just the short to intermediate passing game. And I think they'll pull through here. I like the Patriots.
Okay, I'm taking my Jets, man. Plus 3.5. Like, because even if they do win, that's still more than a field goal difference. You know what I mean? It makes it easy for me. I do think they'll win outright. I think the Jets are feeling hot. I will say, post Brady, the Patriots are 0-2 coming off of their bye. So some of that Belichick magic is just slightly less magical without the greatest of all time there. I think that's obvious. But I think the Jets are on a hot streak right now. And it would be kind of disappointing for not just their fans, but, for just the trajectory of their current organization if they don't capitalize on another division rivalry coming up. All right, next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts at 6.5, plus 6.5, hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, one team doing exceptionally well, one team in a state of flux at the moment. And I will say that tomorrow, for the final part of our Monday recap live stream, we are going to have George Bremer of the Herald Bulletin coming on to talk about the state of the Colts as well. We're going to get a little more insight into what's going on with the Jeff Saturday hire and how the team is responding to it. But for this game, I mean, Eagles are obvious favorites, but Kyle, what do you think? Do you think the Colts can cover a 6.5-point spread? Do you think the good vibes are enough?
Yeah, this is a really tough one because I actually have this at +7, and so this number is really, really difficult for me. At 6.5, I probably would go with the Eagles, but since I have it at 7, I'll stick with the Colts plus the 7. And the main reason why is, look, I think the Eagles are the better team here. I think they are much more cohesive than whatever's going on in Indy. However, here's the thing with Jalen Hurts, for as good as of an improvement he's been making every single week or in every single year of his career, he's only 5-10 against the spread on the road. And I understand the Colts have a lot of question marks still with the new head coach, shaky offensive line and all that stuff. I'm just going to roll with the fact that the veteran Matt Ryan, they seem to have figured something out with creating space for Jonathan Taylor, and he got going last week. I think the Colts at least keep this within a 1-score game. They may not win, but I still feel comfortable taking that +7 or +6.5 here.
I'm also going to take the Colts to cover here. I think that, what we said last week, Jeff Saturday's identity as an offensive lineman is to run the football. And I think that's the one way you can keep games close, or if not beat the Philadelphia Eagles this year, is if you can run the football on them. You saw that against Washington. They just controlled the clock and kept that Eagles offense off the field. And as good as the Eagles have been this season overall, they're only 5-4 covering the spread. That's not great for how great that record is, especially once you get into these 6+ point spreads. They're not very good at covering those so far this year. I think the Colts have a chance to keep this close. They have a very good defense as well. They're top 10 in every category pretty much. And so I think run game, controlling the clock, and a really good defense is going to keep the Colts in this game. I do think the Eagles come away with a win, but I don't think they're going to win by more than a touchdown.
I'm going to go with the Eagles here, only because I look at their record and their average margin of victory is pretty significant. They have 8 wins and only 2 of them have been within 3 points. But coincidentally, that's been to arguably 2 of the worst teams they played. So it's an interesting prospect. But I think they're going to be a little upset with the way they played last week. And they had every chance to win that ball game last week against the Commanders. They just turned the ball over too many times, too many uncharacteristic mistakes. I think they'll try to go and overcorrect that this week, and you'll get a lot. You get a heavy dose of the run game this week, and then you get a lot of efficiency in the passing game. And I think they'll win by 10 points, if I had to say. So
that's what I thought for Monday Night Football last week, and that didn't happen exactly as I had predicted. But I am going to take the Eagles to cover again. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Colts won't have an admirable performance, but I do think the Eagles are a pretty dominant team at this point, and I think coming off of that loss, they will probably have all of their ducks in a row, won't make some of those same mistakes. So I will take the away team for the second pick in a row. The Houston Texans are, again, home underdogs. Big surprise to the Washington Commanders. They are +3. I should mention as well that according to Noah Ndamukong Suh, it is unknown whether he will play, but Linval Joseph is expected to play. So they will have at least one of their new signings at defensive tackle in for Philadelphia. All right, Texans, home underdogs against the Commanders. Commanders had a nice win. I mean, Commanders are all over the place. You know what I mean? It's just the nature of the organization, of the team, of the volatility at quarterback. But they do look like they're getting better as the season progresses. And I think with their current record, it's a tough division, but they could potentially sneak into that final wild card spot. That win over the Eagles definitely put them, in a realistic position to do that. Now it's a tough out because they do still have to beat out either the Seahawks or the Niners, most likely for that spot. But their season is alive. Kyle, how do you think that this game goes in their hunt for the playoffs?
I mean, in terms of the spread, I mean, it's a 3-point spread. So, I mean, with a +3, you're almost anticipating, if you're going to bet the Texans, you're almost anticipating they have a remote shot at winning this game, which I do not think is the case. So I'm taking the Commanders -3. Look, I think the Commanders are kind of a little bit of smoke and mirrors right now. But again, against the Texans, that's more than enough to beat the Texans. So I think Taylor Heineke right now, he's 4-0-1 against the spread in his last 5 starts, and that's good enough for me to go right along with him, especially against the Texans team where they're more than likely gonna get the number 1 pick at this point.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Commanders to cover the spread. I also think they're going to just win this game pretty easily. The Texans are kind of a mess right now, and the Commanders, like you guys have mentioned, have been playing very solid football. That defense is coming around, is playing very good football on that side of the ball. And the Commanders can really run the ball. They found a nice groove with the duo of Robinson and Gibson. And the Texans have the last ranked rush defense in the NFL right now. I think that's going to be their formula to success in this game. They're going to run the ball a ton. And then I don't know what it is, but Heineke and McLaurin have a really good connection. He looks at McLaurin first, second, and third, and it's not even close. And McLaurin produces when Heineke gets in the ball. And so I think it's a really good combination of offense right now with Robinson, Gibson running the football, and then Heineke on play action finding McLaurin. And I think it's just going to be too much for the Texans to keep this game close. So I think the Commanders are going to win this thing pretty easily.
I'm actually going to go Texans here with the 3. I think that Dameon Pierce is such a good player. And as long as Davis Mills takes care of the ball today, which he has been pretty decent at the last couple of weeks, I think that they'll be okay. I'm always a guy that likes to take because they're pretty evenly matched in my opinion. The Commanders have just found ways to win at the end of games, while Texans have found ways to lose at the end of the game. But with the 3 points, I think I like it enough. I think they'll be able to control the ball enough and not turn the ball over, because that's just what happens. You play really good against the Eagles one week, then you play down in competition the next week. I think I'll take 3 points with the Texans.
I'm just going to ride the NFL volatility wave. I get that. I think for me, no Derek Stingley Jr. He's out with a hamstring. That's tough when you've got Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel and a bunch of guys in the receiving game. So who's going to match up with Terry McLaurin? Yeah, I mean, Brison, you said it right, that when he gets him the ball, when anybody gets him the ball, Terry McLaurin puts up numbers. And Heineke's just actually doing it. So I will take the Commanders -3 here. I don't necessarily think it'll be a blowout, but I think they can cover a field goal spread. The Falcons, finally we have a home favorite after the Patriots, -3, hosting the Chicago Bears. Now, I don't know if I agree with necessarily who is being favored, but the Falcons, I guess, are deemed to be an equal team to the Chicago Bears. So, according to Vegas, anyway. Kyle, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, this is kind of funny. After the Falcons started 6-0 against the spread, they're now 0-4 in their last 4 games against the spread. So they've kind of regressed back to the mean. And on the flip side, boy, Justin Fields is looking like a completely different quarterback in the past month. And I'm going to continue to ride with that, mainly because the Falcons have not done very well in terms of defending the run, and that's what the Bears are doing really, really well in their recent offensive explosion run. So at a +3 spread, I think the Bears are going to be more than capable of controlling the ball, keeping that Falcons offense on the sidelines. And even when the Falcons offense has been on the field, they've struggled to move the ball, especially if you look at their game against Carolina. They just couldn't do anything. That might have been one of Marcus's worst performances in the NFL to date. So I would take the Bears +3. This is just a close game. I see the Bears being able to cover this and probably likely winning as well.
I'm going to take the Falcons to cover this. I've made a decent amount of money this year fading the Bears. I think it's going to continue this week. You talk about Justin Fields does look like a different player right now than he did at the beginning of the season. His passing numbers still aren't quite there yet. He's mostly doing it on the ground. And these are two teams really who are very, very similar teams. They both run the football and neither throws it very much. The Falcons are second to last in passing yards. The Bears are last in passing yards. So I expect this to have a ton of run game out of both teams. I think the Falcons are just a little bit better coached, in my opinion. They don't make as many of the dumb mistakes late in ball games that the Bears tend to make. I think they're the least penalized team in football last I checked, which is really impressive for a team that doesn't have an exorbitant amount of talent. When you don't have as much talent as other teams, you have to be well coached and disciplined, and the Falcons are one of the better teams in that area in the NFL. And I think that the defense for the Falcons can stop the run a little bit better than the Bears can. So I think that the Falcons offense is just going to find a little bit better success so far today. So I think I'm going to take the Falcons to cover this thing at home.
I think I like the Falcons pick. I just think the Bears are finding ways to lose, and it's just as simple as that. Like Justin Fields has made clear and obvious strides. I thought that they could still sneak into the wild card position before last week's loss. But when you just look at the way the games are going, I don't see it going any differently. The only time they've had success is when Justin Fields is extending plays, because a lot of these runs aren't designed quarterback runs. He's just extending plays and making plays happen. And that's just not a sustainable product. We've seen it time and time again. So I think that the Falcons will cover. I think that they'll get a heavy dose of Cordell Patterson this week and find ways to get him involved, because when he's involved, the offense is just, it takes off to another level. And I think they should give Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I mean, it sounds very simple, right? Like, get the ball to your good players, but they haven't been doing it. So I know Mariota has struggled at times. I think last week was by far his worst game of the season. But he's been overall pretty decent, and I think you can trust him enough, especially against this Bears defense that has struggled significantly the last month and a half, especially with the loss of Roquan and Robert Quinn and those guys. I think you can trust the Falcons today.
Well, I don't know about trust. I mean, after that performance from Marcus, I'm kind of out on the Falcons. I feel like they're kind of regressing back to a little bit what people expected of them. I think they overperformed a little bit based on, not that they don't have talent, but I think they're certainly not what you would call the most well-rounded team in the NFL. And if you're getting those kind of quarterback performances, it's going to hold you back notably. And even if the Bears are finding ways to lose, even if that's the case, they found a way to lose by 1 point last week, I think, against the Lions, if I remember right. So you can cover a 3-point spread and still find a way to lose. So I'm going to take the Bears in this game because they're just trending more in the right direction, and they're underdogs. Man, I have not picked a single home team yet so far. All right. New York Giants home favorites -3 over the Detroit Lions. This is a weird game. I have kind of a funny feeling about it. I don't know if I have a good football reason for it, but the Giants just keep winning games, man. They're a fun story, and the Lions were supposed to be the fun story that the Giants are before the season. After Hard Knocks, everybody falling in love with Dan Campbell. Obviously didn't quite shake out that way, but both of these teams have an entire second half of the season that will tell the story for 2022. Kyle, how do you think this weekend goes?
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar spot where I'm having difficulty with the spread. I'm gonna go with the Giants -3. I am a little bit worried. The Giants, Daniel Jones is better on the road than he is at home in his career, so that's kind of concerning to me. However, if you look at quarterbacks that are terrible on the road in terms of the spread and everything like that, that's Jared Goff. Jared Goff hasn't won a back-to-back road or the second of a consecutive road trip since 2018. He's 2-6 against the spread in that same kind of time span. So I understand the Lions may look like they have turned a corner, especially against the Bears, but at the same time, the Giants are as Kyron said, in terms of the Bears are finding ways to lose, the Giants are finding ways to win football games. Every single week they are doing just enough to win football games. And against the Lions team, I think they're more than capable enough to find more than enough ways to win against the Lions in a close game.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Giants to cover here. Despite the Lions' pretty impressive back-to-back wins against the Bears and Packers, I just think the Giants are playing with so much momentum. These are two teams who are actually both really good at covering spreads. Interestingly, that both teams have positive records in that regard, but the Giants are the second best team in the NFL at covering spreads at 7-2. I think at home, Saquon Barkley looks insane right now. He looks like, if not the best back in football, one of the best backs in football again. I think he's going to be too much for this Lions team to overcome with their 31st ranked rush defense. I think it's going to be a ton of running for the Giants today. Daniel Jones is going to get involved in the run game. They're doing things very interestingly. They play a very similar offense to the Bears, really, where their quarterback gets involved in the run game, and they don't rely on him to do too much. They rely so heavily on that run game. But the Giants do it at a more efficient rate when they do need to throw the football, that it's actually working out for them better. So I think the Giants, with that combination of offense going against one of the worst defenses in the NFL at home, is a really good recipe to win.
Yeah, I'll keep mine really, really simple. The Giants have Saquon Barkley. The Lions don't. The Giants don't turn the football over. The Lions do, and that'll be why they cover the spread. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going against every logical piece of information that I have regarding this game, and I'm just going off of a gut feeling, and I don't know what that will net me, if anything. I'm going to take the Lions +3. I think the Giants will probably, find the way to win, in quotes. But again, you can find a way to win by kicking a field goal to go up by 1 or 2 as the game expires. The Lions are good enough on offense that I do think that they will be able to score. It's a small spread, but I'm still just going to take the Lions just because I have points, even though I kind of expect the Giants to find a way to gut it out in the end. So, again, not really a good, valid reason why. All right. In one of the most banged up and kind of underwhelming games of the entire season so far, we have the Los Angeles Rams visiting the Saints. The Saints are -2.5 in this game. I mean, if you look at who's out, Brian Allen is out for the Rams, but obviously they're also missing Cooper Kupp, who's on IR, so not on the injury report. And New Orleans is missing Cameron Jordan, Marcus Davenport, Marshawn Lattimore, Pete Werner, James Hurst, who's their tackle. Mark Ingram is not playing in this game. These are all officially out, and Andrus Peat, starting guard. So they are just shredded by injuries. And while the Rams don't look good, it is, I know that they're on the road, but kind of insulting that they're not favored in this game just off of that alone. Now, I don't know if they will ultimately win this, but it's like when you look at that injury report and you're going to say that this Saints team is going to beat the team that is, still has Jalen Ramsey, still has Aaron Donald, still has Matthew Stafford back from concussion now. If they lose this game, they are truly falling apart in a way that they haven't even showed yet. This would be a new level of disappointment for the Rams so far this season. Kyle, what do you think is going to happen?
I absolutely hate this game. I tell everybody, do not bet on this game. It just does not intrigue me at all. And also, I have no read on this. I'm taking the Saints at -2.5 here. Look, I think the spread's the way it is because the Rams offense has looked so dreadful this season, and that was with Cooper Kupp. Now he's gone, and I'm not sure who on earth Matthew Stafford's going to throw to. He doesn't have really any sort of chemistry with any of his receivers outside of, say, Tyler Higbee. And Higbee hasn't been much of a threat of late. So I realize the Saints are kind of all sorts of banged up. Their offense is kind of sputtering in terms of can't get things together. They have Kamara and all that stuff, but I just can't go with the Rams. I know their defense great, but until I see the Stafford's ability to spread the ball around to anybody except Cooper Kupp, this is just not a team I'm willing to bet on.
I'm going to take the Rams to cover here, just in large part because of all the injuries the Saints have, especially on that defensive side of the ball. I think it's going to play into the Rams getting something going offensively, especially on the ground game. Because for people who know the Sean McVay offense, they think of this as a passing offense. It's really a running offense. They want to get some kind of run game going because it sets up the play action, which works so well in that offense. They just haven't had the production in the run game to open up the passing game so far this season. I think with all the injuries the Saints have, especially along that defensive line and with Pete Warner, I think this is a good chance for the Rams to get something going in the run game. I also just think that Rams defense is going to smother the Saints offense. The Saints do have probably the most dangerous weapon in this game with Alvin Kamara, but he's so hit or miss. It's 1 week, 150 yards and a couple touchdowns. The next week he has like 30 yards. I don't know what Kamara we're going to get this week. I think the Rams have enough overall talent, and I think they have the better coaching to squeak away with that. If at the very least they cover this game, if not win this game.
Yeah, that's kind of where I disagree. Sean McVay has shown time and time again that they don't make adjustments or that they can't make adjustments. So I think that it'll be close, probably back and forth early. But I do trust the Saints to find ways to have explosive plays. And then I trust their defense to stop the Rams' attack because everybody has stopped the Rams' attack. They haven't looked good all year. The Saints have actually had more explosive games where they're scoring 25, 30 plus. Chris Olave has looked incredible. As long as they find ways to get him on anybody not named Jalen Ramsey, it's going to be a good day for them. Is Jarvis Landry back? I know y'all have the injury report for people that aren't playing, but he's not playing, you said?
No, Jarvis is playing.
So
Thomas is out still.
So Jarvis Landry is back as well. Now that's another added wrinkle for them. I think they'll find a way to score enough points to cover. I mean, with the points to get this done. I think the Rams just haven't given me anything to believe in them, and I think it continues this week.
Oh man, this is a hideous game to pick. It's hard for me to really believe that the Rams would lose this game with the Saints just missing so many of their key players. I guess I have to take the Saints at -2.5 just because they do have more offensively going on. But I mean, that offensive line is banged up. If Aaron Donald has a good game, I just expect him to, I don't expect him to just give up, and he's going to be shredding backup tackle and guard on the left side of the line, I think. So it's like, I don't know, man. I'll take the Saints at -2.5 just to keep the ball rolling, but I feel like I'm going to regret that pick. All right, next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens at -13 over the Carolina Panthers. So along with our injury report there, I will just say Lamar is expected to play through an illness. Mark Andrews is expected to play, and Gus Edwards is not likely, although a successful pregame workout could change his status. And the Panthers cornerback J.C. Horn is expected to play through his foot injury. So that's what we were looking at in terms of a slightly updated report. And this is a huge spread. That's a big spread, even for a team as good as the Ravens. You guys will, if I'm going that way, I'm going to get talked into it right now because I'm kind of leaning away from it. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a tough one because the Ravens have just been so bothersome with how they play sometimes. They've done a lot of things to lose games, but again, they are on a 3-game winning streak. I am going to take the Panthers plus 13 though. The spread's too big. I don't love Baker Mayfield, but at the same time, the spread's just too big for me right now to where I can take the Ravens, and that's probably that's all I can give you because I really don't have a good feel for this game, especially with such a big spread.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Panthers to cover here. If for no other reason, even if they're good to go, Mark Andrews won't be 100%. Lamar Jackson may be feeling something from that illness that may affect him. And the Ravens, despite how well they've played, they don't blow teams out. They're in a lot of one-score games. They keep things very close. Other than really the Saints game, they haven't really blown anyone out since week one. And that was against the week one Jets, who are a very different team than they are now. So I think a lot of it's just I think the Ravens keep games close. It's the nature of their offense with that run game. It bleeds clock. And when you are a running football team, you don't really tend to blow a lot of teams out just because it's less possessions on both sides of the ball. The Panthers have also found a really good groove with their run game. So I think it's just that clock's going to bleed the entire game because there's not going to be a ton of passing. And then if it for no other reason, Baker Mayfield, for whatever reason, plays well against the Ravens. I don't know if that continues this week, but a bunch of his best games of his career are against Baltimore. So maybe he has a little bit of momentum with that this week as well. I don't know. But I just think that the Panthers run game is going to keep them not in this game, but within 2 scores.
Yeah, I mean, 13 points is way too much. You got to take that. It's the NFL. Most games are pretty dang close, even when the teams aren't necessarily evenly matched on paper or what you're seeing from them for the course of the year. So I definitely think you took the Panthers with the points. Pretty easy choice there. If you lose a 13-point spread, I mean, you just got to chalk it up.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, and that's basically how I felt pre each of your spiels. So Panthers plus 13, it's just too big of a spread. Obviously, I like the Ravens, but it would be surprising if they do get that far ahead. Because the Panthers, not like they don't have anything on offense. They're just not quite all the way there. All right. Next up, we have a relocated game. The Buffalo Bills are -8 favorites on a neutral field in Detroit against the Cleveland Browns. So, Browns are kind of coming up against it. A disappointing season. They still have a couple of games left with Deshaun Watson. I think if they lose the next 2 games, they really have zero hope of getting into the playoffs. And I feel like that sounds far away, but if they were able to squeak out these 2 next games, then, depending on how Watson plays, they at least have a shot. If they don't win, that's it. Obviously, the expectation is that they don't beat the Bills, who are on a 2-game losing streak. Kyle, what do you think?
That whole Bills game last week was wild, and it really soured my taste in the Bills. I'm gonna take them again though here at -8. I feel bad about doing that. I don't feel great about it, but at the same time, I think the Bills are going to be a lot more buttoned up than they were against the Vikings. They had a chance to go up by 3 possessions in that game, and Josh Allen threw it away. It's as simple as that. And so I don't want to overreact to as bad of a meltdown as that was. And so I'm looking at this right now. The Bills are 8-2-1 against the spread with Josh Allen after allowing 28 points or more in their previous game. And they've covered the spread by at least 6 points per game. So I'm going to ride on this team's history with Josh Allen, with Sean McDermott, and I think they'll cover this 8-point spread.
I'm going to take the Browns to cover here, and I think a big reason is Nick Chubb. If you look at the Bills' 2-game losing streak, what has been the recipe to beating them? It's been getting the run game going. The Jets ran for over 130 or 120 yards on them. You saw what Dalvin Cook did to them last week. Nick Chubb's better than anything the last 2 teams they've played. He's, in my opinion, the best back in football right now. I think him alone is going to be able to keep this game close. There's also a ton of injuries on the defensive side of the football for the Bills that concerns me mostly with their secondary. Tre'Davious White out. Both their safeties are hurt. Their rookie corner, who's been playing very solid this year, Kyer Elam, he's questionable. And then Gregory Rousseau, who's been one of their better pass rushers this year, he's also out for this game. So I think there's going to be enough offense with Nick Chubb to keep them in it. I do think the Bills win. Another thing that does concern me is the elbow for Josh Allen. I wouldn't have played him against the Vikings, personally. I think you could see that, especially after that one interception where he ran down and tried to tackle the guy. He was lying on the ground in pain for a while. I thought it was very serious. So I think the elbow concerns me a little bit for Josh. I do think the Bills are good enough to beat the Browns still, but I don't think it's going to be by more than 8 points.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I think the Bills win, but I don't think it'll be by 8 points. They've had a very hard time stopping the inside run. It's been a problem for 2 years now. So when you go up against one of the best offensive lines in football, the Browns going to be looking to kind of get a little bit back from last week. They didn't play their best game against the Miami Dolphins, so they're going to be a little pissed off going to there this week. And you got a lot to prove. Their season isn't done, and I can guarantee you those guys in that locker room are thinking the same thing Max said earlier. If they can get a couple wins here and they get Deshaun Watson back in a couple weeks, they're going to be feeling as good as anybody about their chances to get a wild card. So there's a lot to play for. I think they're going to give it their all. I don't think they win in the end, but I think they cover the spread.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think the Bills are hands down going to win this game because they're going to use this, inability to play at their home field, having to go to Detroit as, like a team adversity that they have to overcome. I think they're going to rally with that. I do think they're going to win. I think the Brown style of football does not play into their favor, though. The Bills' favor, that is. They not only do they have Nick Chubb, who is a better running back than Dalvin Cook or anybody that the Jets fielded that week, they also have a better offensive line than either of the teams from the past couple of weeks as well. So I do feel like they'll be able to control the ball effectively, move it, keep the clock running, and score points. I think ultimately their pass defense is probably going to succumb to the Bills, but 8 is a fairly large spread. It's more than a touchdown, so I will take the Browns to cover that. Broncos -2.5 versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry, Kyle. Sorry, Brison. This is probably almost as sad as the Rams versus Saints game, but the Broncos are missing a bunch of guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think Noah's updating the spread there probably. But the Raiders are missing a bunch of guys. Broncos are missing a bunch of guys. They're favored at home, but they're not even favored by the full 3 points. So that means that, according to Vegas, the Raiders are slightly better. I will throw in the Raiders receiver Devontae Adams is expected to play through his injury. So he should be out there even if he's listed as questionable. It does make a bit of a difference, although I don't know. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this game that we thought was going to, I don't know, that many people thought was going to be a season highlight type of game?
Yeah, this is really, really tough because you have two conflicting trends going on here. One, you have Derek Carr being basically the least profitable quarterback on the road since 2017. However, his most profitable opponent he plays against is the Denver Broncos. And so you're basically deciding which Derek Carr you're getting in this game. And I'm going to go with the fact they're going to get the good Derek Carr because I think the fact is he's played well against the Broncos. It's the one team he seems to have a read on, despite the Broncos' great defense and everything like that. And I just can't go with anything the Broncos do offensively right now. Only 10 points against the Tennessee Titans is absolutely asinine in my opinion. So I'm going to go with the Raiders plus 2.5 here.
This game really scares me because I don't like either team in this game. This is going to be a rough game to watch. I am going to take the Broncos to cover here. If for no other reason, yes, Davante Adams is playing, but the Broncos have the best corner in football. Pat Surtain has allowed 4 catches this season since week 6, which is just absolutely absurd. And the last time these two teams played, he held Davante Adams to, I think it was like 4 catches for 17 yards. So banged up Davante Adams going against Pat Surtain's not a good combination for the Raiders. The Raiders have one of the worst defenses in football as well so far this season. I don't think that helps the Broncos much because the offense can't get anything going. I just don't know if the Raiders are going to be able to get anything going either. And if there's one trend that has helped the Broncos a little bit is when the offense wakes up a little bit, it's in the first quarter. They have had multiple games where they scored 10 plus points in the first quarter. It's just since after that quarter, it's been a little bit rough. And I'm hoping the news came out this morning. Nathaniel Hackett not calling plays for this game is going to be Clint Kubiak, who called plays in Minnesota last year. So I'm hoping that turn things around a little bit and no Josh McDaniels not giving up the reins to anyone. So that's another reason I'm taking the Broncos because I can't take Josh McDaniels in any game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Broncos here simply because they've been in every game they've played this year. They're like the best bad football team I've ever seen. And they normally have the ball going in to try to tie or win the game at the end of the game. Normally they're in very good position to win ball games. And like you said, now the Hackett's not the general play caller anymore. The defense is playing exceptionally well. I think you can trust them over the Raiders, who don't have anything to play for, essentially. And knowing some guys in the locker room and knowing some guys around the organization, the mood has been very sour this week, especially losing to a Jeff Saturday-led team, which y'all get into later. But I think you could trust them enough. And Russell Wilson hasn't played bad football at all the last 3 or 4 games of the year. So hopefully with the new play calling and a little bit more life and excitement, they'll get it going. I think 2.5 is fine.
Yeah, I'm going to take them at 2.5 as well because they don't have Hunter Renfrow. I believe he's still on IR.
Yep.
They don't have Darren Waller. I believe he's still on IR. They have Devontae Adams, who probably is still very good, even if he is a little bit banged up. But again, going up against Pat Surtain, that's going to be the only reason to watch this game. I definitely won't watch it live, but if I do watch it, it will be specifically to watch those two go at it. And I do suspect that at least right now, Pat Surtain's going to win that. And that means that you're putting the entire load of the offense on Josh Jacobs. I mean, he has played very well this year so far, but I think that's a lot to ask of him against a defense as good as the Broncos. So I will take them to cover the spread. It's less than a field goal, so I'm comfortable with it. All right, divisional matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are plus 3.5 underdogs at home versus the Cincinnati Bengals. So, Bengals looking a little bit better after their loss against the Browns. They're still missing Jamar Chase, but they're finding ways to win without him. The Steelers are not very injured. They're missing Akella Witherspoon, but that's kind of it for them. They look like they're kind of getting everybody back. So their defensive front is good. Minka Fitzpatrick is back. I mean, I could see this game swinging in their favor just because I know that some people are kind of out on them, but I've always been very impressed by their defense, and with everybody kind of there to contribute, that's a tough out for the Bengals without their best offensive player. Kyle, how do you think this is going to shake out?
Well, you guys have heard me multiple times say I think the Bengals are kind of are really frustrating, and I don't think they're as good as they actually are. I'm taking the Steelers plus 3.5 here. Look, if the Steelers are healthy, that means that's all I need to hear, because one thing's for certain, Mike Tomlin as an underdog at home is nearly untouchable. He's 15-2-1 against the spread in those spots, and he's covered the last 9 straight with winning 7 outright. So this is a really good spot for the Steelers to upend the Bengals and keep the Bengals going in their up and down season right now. So I'll take the Steelers plus 3.5 at home.
I'm going to take the Bengals to cover here. I get the Steelers' defense is really impressive in a lot of ways, and TJ Watt has that ability to just wreck a game all by himself, which is completely doable against this Bengals offensive line. But they are 30th in the NFL against the pass. And that newly acquired corner, they got William Jackson already on IR, so that's not going to help them much in this game. They have Minka Fitzpatrick coming back, but I don't know how effective he is coming off the injury right away. The Bengals are missing Jamar Chase, but I do think they have enough talent with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon and Hayden Hurst to get the offense going. And Joe Mixon finally looks like the old Joe Mixon. He's starting to turn his season around a little bit at a time. And so I just think And the biggest thing that points me to taking the Bengals is the quarterback matchup. It's really hard for me to take Kenny Pickett over Joe Burrow in this spot. I think the Bengals are playing for a chance to stay within that division or at least a wild card spot, while the Steelers are kind of reeling. They're not. I don't think they're playing for much anymore this season, and it's hard for me to take Pickett to beat Joe Burrow. So I'm going to take the Bengals to cover the spread.
I'm going to go Steelers here. The defense is getting healthy. Najee Harris, the last 3 weeks, is starting to, get back to his form of old. So I think they'll be able to run the ball in this defense. I think they'll be able to take care of the ball. Kenny Pickett only has 1 turnover in the last 2 weeks, which has been a huge improvement because he's been really good in games and then just had the inopportune turnover that really comes to bite that team in the end. So with him taking care of the ball, the defense getting healthy, and Najee Harris returning to form, I like the Steelers here at home because I think the Bengals are going to have to press a lot without Jamar Chase. Being able to just throw a slant to him or throw a quick screen and let him make plays or stretch the team vertically is going to put them at a bind against a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think that they'll be able to cover that 3.5 spread. Excuse me. I think they'll be able to win with that spread.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Steelers as well. Even if the Bengals win, 3.5 points is just enough to make me comfortable with it. I love that Steelers defense. I love Minkah Fitzpatrick. He is so good. I think he's a dog. I think he'll tough it out. I know, it's kind of a weird situation for, appendicitis. That was what he had last week that he wasn't able to play through. But I think that even if there's discomfort, he's still going to make plays. They're the 30th ranked pass defense, but that's been without TJ Watt in there, and he makes a massive difference. It's the pairing of the pass rush with Minkah doing everything he does on the back end that makes them as good as they are. They were lacking that. They were still in a lot of games. I think they won by 10 points a couple of weeks ago. So whether they win or not, I'm going to take them to cover this spread, at least with the back door. All right, last game that we are going to cover here in this segment is the Minnesota Vikings hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys are favored at -1.5. So even though they lost versus the NFC North last week in a big spot, and the Vikings beat the Bills in a big spot, they're still home underdogs. Kyle, what do you think about that?
It's kind of interesting just to see how the odds makers feel about these two teams. Obviously, the odds makers still believe the Cowboys are a very good team, and heck, they value them more than the Vikings in this scenario, which is kind of shocking to me. I'm going to take the Vikings plus 1.5. At some point I have to believe the Vikings are for real, and I think that game against the Bills finally just knocked me over the hump here. I love everything about their team right now. Jefferson might be wide receiver number 1 in the league right now, and he's extending his gap over everybody, even though I know Stephon Diggs and Jamar Chase are also very, very good, but he has been phenomenal of late. And so I do get a little bit scared knowing that this game is technically a 4 p.m. Eastern time game, and that is not something that's been great for Kirk Cousins, as he's 20 and 30 against the spread in those spots. But I just think right now the Vikings have all the makings of a team that can be a real playoff threat, and I think they'll continue to prove that against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Vikings here. One big way to beat this Dallas defense, which is very impressive, is with the run, because it kind of keeps the pass rush on their heels. They have to account for the run game, which isn't the Cowboys' strength. They're 29th against the rush. And you saw what Dalvin Cook did last week. He kept them in that game with that third quarter touchdown to keep it close. And I just don't know if the Cowboys have anyone that can stop Dalvin Cook. You mentioned Justin Jefferson. The Cowboys definitely don't have anyone that can stop him. I agree with you, Kyle. I think he's the best receiver in football right now. He is playing absolutely absurd. That catch he had against the Bills was insane. I've never seen anything like it. One-handed, his body was parallel to the field. One-handed, stole it from the guy. It was absolutely absurd. I think Kirk Cousins is playing with a lot of momentum. The team plays really hard for him. They love him. You can tell with every win how much they love Kirk Cousins. I think that they're playing with just so much momentum. That run game's in beat up this Cowboys defense. And one thing that to keep an eye on is if Anthony Barr plays, or if Anthony Barr doesn't play for some reason, they choose to make Micah Parsons, who's probably the best pass rusher in football right now, a middle linebacker whenever Barr doesn't play, and that really hurts that defense because last week he did only rush the passer like 11 times and didn't touch Aaron Rodgers once. If the Cowboys want to win games, they need Micah Parsons rushing the quarterback. I don't know if that's going to happen this week. So I've got the Vikings covering at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Cowboys here. And to your point right there, they only threw the ball 19 times last week, the Packers, that is. So it was hard for him to get any pass rush looks anyway. Mm-hmm. But we all know that the Vikings are going to drop back at least 30-plus times this week, and it's just the way they go. So I think Micah is going to have a whale of a ball game. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to have a whale of a ball game. And I think Zeke back helps a lot because it just balances out the offense a lot more. You won't see Dak throw it 47. I think he threw the ball 47 times last week. You won't have to see him throw the ball 47 times this week because there's never been a recipe for success for that team. Keep Dak around 30 to 33 throws, get 15 to 17 carries for Zeke, 15 to 17 carries for Tony Pollard, and the Cowboys are good enough to balance it out and win that game. I'll take the Cowboys, no question about it.
Ah, man. I don't know. I'm going to take the Vikings in this game. I'm going to take them with plus 1.5. Zadarius Smith is expected to play on a limited snap count because it's a short week. Like you said, Kyron, Zeke is expected to play, as well as DeMarcus Lawrence, even though both are technically questionable at this point. So, big game for the Packers to try, or for the Cowboys to try and bounce back. The Vikings are riding high, though. At home, I think I like them. I think I like them. Yeah, I'm going to take the Vikings in this game. I haven't really been a big Vikings supporter throughout the season, but they're starting to show me a little bit more. They are a team who's getting hot right now. If they maintain this hot streak, this could be a team in the playoffs that nobody wants to face. This is a team, though, that could be the Eagles despite their earlier loss. Again, I think momentum does make a big difference once you get to those win-or-go-home games. So we'll see if that continues. I'm going to take them this week. So that's all that we're going to pick for today in this segment. Now I'm going to jump to our standings just to reflect on last week slightly. Kyle, you are in first place with 76.5 via our play action pool. You can join that and I will shout you out if you win any single week. And Kyle, you also won this past week with 9 correct. So a really nice week for you. And let's see here, Brison, where do I see you? You had 7 and I also had 7. So week 10, I've got you with.
I'm at 7 on the standings.
Okay, I got you. You're at 7. I think I'm at 3 if I remember right. Mm-hmm. I had 7 correct last week. You had 5 correct last week. So I was right at about 500. I think there were 14 games played last week. So right in the middle. Kyle, you're on the plus side. Nice. And then the last thing that I will do, I'm still waiting to be joined by our upcoming guests here. We may have a slight change in that as once I get final word. But standings as they are right now, we're more than halfway through the season, so we've got to look at the playoff picture every time we do this now. So right now, the AFC East is being led by the Dolphins at 7-3 with a slim lead over the Jets and Bills. The Jets currently have the tiebreaker with the Dolphins, but the Dolphins have one more win. They're on their bye right now. The Bills, after losing to the Vikings, are now behind by half a game to both the Jets and Dolphins in a tiebreaker scenario, but they still have to play each other all one more time before the season is through. The Ravens are comfortably up in, I shouldn't say comfortably, it's really only one game, but they are up in the North at 6-3. The Tennessee Titans are pretty much owning the South Division, and the Chiefs are owning the West Division. Tennessee 6-3, KC 7-2. The wild card is currently packed with AFC East teams, but that will probably shake out, over the next couple of weeks. I don't think all 4 AFC East teams make it. I think the Jets win this week, which would knock New England out most likely, but the Jets are at 6-3, Buffalo's at 6-3, and New England's at 5-4. In the hunt, the Chargers are at 5-4, the Bengals are at 5-4, And of course, Indy is hanging on there by a thread at 4-5-1. That tie keeps them just barely in the running. Because at this point, that means they're only half a game back from New England. So we could see some crazy stuff with Jeff Saturday. That would be something. In the NFC, we have the Eagles and the Vikings atop the conference, both winning their own divisions at 8-1. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are beating an underwhelming NFC South. They're 5-5, but still in the lead. And the Seahawks, despite losing, are 6-4 and still in the lead for the NFC West. Wildcard teams: New York Giants 7-2, Dallas 6-3, and the San Francisco 49ers are 5-4. Just behind them, we have the Washington Commanders, who are 5-5 and don't have the toughest schedule. So I think they are probably realistic contenders if a team falls off here. Maybe Dallas disappoints and they can tie up at. I don't think that's right. Dallas 6-3. They should have. Yes, it is. Is Washington 5-5? Do they not have their bye week till next week? They have a late bye, I guess. And the Green Bay Packers and Atlanta Falcons are both 4-6. So, I mean, not too far behind, but also not playing super, super well despite, Green Bay. If it's a team, if it's one of those teams, it would be Green Bay. So I'm guessing that the playoff standings look fairly similar as the season progresses, but I think the New England Patriots will ultimately fall off. I just think their offense will hold them back. Either the Bengals or the Chargers will probably slide in there. The NFC playoff picture probably won't change too terribly much. I'm not sure I see a team really making a push to get in there because we're just waiting on everybody else to join at the moment. Kyle, do you have any thoughts on the playoff picture as it stands?
Yeah, one team I think that's going to be really scary as the season moves on. The San Francisco 49ers. Look, they're getting healthy, which is always the thing with them. If they're healthy, they are a Super Bowl threat. They are that talented of a team, and the fact that they're getting even more time with McCaffrey now. We've seen how good it looks just with him being there in a short time. As this season goes on, just imagining how Shanahan's going to continue to evolve that offense with a guy like that on their team is going to make them a serious threat. And if let's say they don't win that division, I would not want to host them. I absolutely would not want to host them because that is the team that just absolutely is built for the postseason. So I think that's really interesting. I think they're very, very interesting to follow as the season progresses.
Yeah, they are. They're good. They're very good defense. I think they're a championship caliber defense. So as long as they stay healthy there, then I think that they could contend with anybody. And since the NFC West doesn't necessarily look like the strongest division right now, they can probably push their way through to enough wins. But so we have Charles Goldman here of Chiefs Wire. I think we may be short Gavino Borquez from Chargers Wire due to a minor confusion with time zone differential. But let's bring in Charles here in just a sec. Kyle and Brison and Kyron, I thank you so much for picking all the games with me. Kyle, let everybody know where they can find you until we see you again next Sunday.
Yeah, I write for GridironHeroics.com, just writing betting stuff. And then I'm a big Pac-12 guy. There was a couple of good games on last night. And then you can always follow me on Twitter at Kyle_Nishida.
Beautiful. And Brison, how about you, man?
You can find me on Twitter at Brison Owens 16. That's Brison. And you can see me both on Gridiron Heroics and on the Denver Sports Betting Show.
Beautiful. And Kyron, man, you are all over the place. You do tons of stuff, including our weekly game recaps, which will be tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to do all the games, and we're going to have Max Chadwick from PFF to recap the college football week, which was a good one. And then we will, like I said, have George Bremer on to talk about the Indianapolis Colts situation. Guys, thanks so much. We'll see you soon. And let's bring on Charles Goldman to talk a little Sunday Night Football.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Charles, how you doing, my friend?
It's good to see you, man.
Likewise. It's been a minute. I think Gavino, I believe, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I think there was some confusion about when exactly 11 a.m. Eastern is in Arizona. So.
see, and here I was thinking I was going to be the one who was going to miss it. We
Well,
pulled a
thank goodness
reverse
you're
on
here. I appreciate you, man. So Charles Goldman, he is the managing editor for Chiefs Wire. He is a breakfast burrito aficionado and big time supporter and a friend of mine. And we are going to preview Sunday Night Football. It's a good one. It was flexed in, you know. I think
that's how
the
you know it's a
Chargers
good
have been.
one. That's how you know it's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking forward to it. You know, the Chargers weren't able to pull it out last week, but they are still a competitive team as long as they have Justin Herbert at the helm. It looks like they should be getting both receivers back, despite being listed as questionable. The inside news is they are supposed to play. So you will have to defend those guys, and I think it'll make a difference. But, man, you know how it is. We usually talk about the team and kind of their status. It's been a while since we talked about the Chiefs. So before we go into the game itself, how do the Chiefs look right now? Obviously, winning the division. Patrick Mahomes is doing his thing. But the defense has been a little questionable at times, perhaps a little overblown in my opinion. But if there is weakness, that would be it. And, you know, big hit to Juju Smith-Schuster is going to keep him out for a little while. But how do you feel about the season as it's gone? Anything that you want to point out that makes you particularly optimistic? Anything you have some questions about?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the defense. I think they're getting hot at the right time, right? I mean, last week they went against a Jaguars team, which was allowing, I believe, the second fewest sacks in the National Football League. This week they get the team that's allowing the least sacks in the National Football League. But last week, five sacks from defensive line linebackers. Just a really, really nice job. And I think a lot of it had to do actually with the coverage in the secondary because they were getting sacks with a 4-man rush, which they've struggled to do all season long. So 3 of their 5 sacks came, with just a 4-man rush. And that tells me, hey, maybe the secondary is holding up a little better than they have. And that tracks because they've got Trent McDuffie back there. They hadn't had him since, the first half of week 1. And, he's looked every part the superstar lockdown corner that Chiefs fans were promised when they traded up for him in the first round. Then Joshua Williams, who's a 4th-round pick out of an HBCU, he wasn't really playing a lot early on. Now they're platooning him with Jalen Watson, who, if you remember, you go back to the first matchup with the Chargers and the Chiefs, he had the pick 6 that really helped give them the lead and win that game. So now he's platooning with Jalen Watson opposite Trent McDuffie, and they're seeing a lot of success doing that. Williams, I think, will be someone who plays and has a big impact on whether the Chiefs win this game because he's someone who really Kansas City envisioned him as this guy is our weapon against Chargers wide receiver Mike Williams. He's got the length and the size to really compete at the catch point where no other Chiefs Chiefs cornerback has been able to do that with Mike Williams. He's always been, I think last time we talked about this, they considered him the Chiefs killer. He's always has these big games against the Chiefs. And now obviously coming back after some time off, he'll be feeling fresh and healthy and ready to go. So I suspect that Joshua Williams will play a big part if they're able to shut down Mike Williams. So
looking at the rookie class at large, it's a big rookie class, a lot of picks at the top. I mean, you had Trent McDuffie, you had George Karlaftis, you had Sky Moore, a number of high picks. How would you say that they're performing overall, and how influential over the team's success do you think they are? Because I had a conversation with my co-host Nick Merriam last Thursday about GM of the Year candidates, and Veach was very close to the top 5 for me. I had him at 6, so he wasn't a guy that we spent a lot of time on. I did like the offseason. I thought that the trade of Tyreek Hill was effective. The draft class was solid. But I want to see what your thoughts are on it, because that's not a conversation that we've had in depth at this moment.
Yeah, I think he should be, right at the top, in my opinion. Now, and that's whole picture. You're looking at all the losses in free agency that he had to replace, all the players that he brought in the draft, and the fact that the vast majority of them are contributing, from first round pick all the way down to the last guy they selected. So that is what's really impressive to me. And then you add in his most recent piece of work, which is looking better and better by the week, with Mecole Hardman now on injured reserve. You have Kadarius Toney coming in and looking like an entirely different player from what he was in New York. You know, he's contributing immediately, just absolutely electric on the field with the ball in his hands. And, you know, you're seeing all these tweets pop up from all the draft analysts, you know, before the 2021 NFL draft. And they're like, whatever you do, don't let, you know, Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs get this guy. And sure enough, they get this guy.
Yeah.
And my goodness, I mean, they're doing a lot of fun stuff with him. I'm excited. You know, the longer that Andy Reid has his hands on him and sees what he can do, the more creative he's going to get. And I've been saying all week that this game is this one that you can empty the clip on, right? Like if you're Kansas City, no play in the playbook is off limits this week. You want to go out there and just show out. And because if you win this game, you can effectively, you know, unless you have some serious issues down the stretch, which they can't expect, but you can effectively wrap up the division with a win today.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's already out of reach just based on the overall consistency of the Chiefs, but this would put a stamp on it. The Chargers will still have an opportunity to grasp a wild card spot, you know, leaving the opportunity open for a future matchup, which I think would be fun storyline wise. But the Chiefs are the dominant team in the AFC West, and I did pick them to win the AFC West this year as well. So I'll shout myself out one more time for that.
Pat him back.
I just don't understand why people were so ready to anoint somebody else when the Chiefs have had basically unmitigated success since Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes got together. I'll never understand why people do that.
I'll tell you what it is. I think that just
Boredom,
generally speaking, from people who don't cover the NFL, and you know, some of these national analysts and whatnot who are taking this like broad approach, I don't think they really grasp how important coaching is. And you know, it takes time. Like we've been seeing with the Chargers. I mean, Brandon Staley is a good coach, but to become like a great head coach, it takes time, and you got to learn, and you got to have great people around you. And I mean, I think if you look at there's not one coaching staff in the NFL from top to bottom that is better than the one that Andy Reid has assembled.
Yeah, no, I'm very impressed with what they do. I think, you know, the Bill or I want to say the Bills because I still think of the Bills when I think of Dable, but the Giants snagging Kafka, I think, was a really nice move by them, and it just shows you what kind of young talent they have on their staff, and I'm sure more and more guys will continue to get opportunities elsewhere.
I'll throw a name out there right now. I was talking about the secondary. Dave Merritt, our defensive backs coach, he's handling both the cornerbacks and the safeties this year because our cornerbacks coach went to coach in Miami. But he's been phenomenal this year, and he really understands the game. I think one day he's going to be a head coach in the National Football League. I'll say that. I'll throw that out there right now. He hasn't even been a defensive coordinator. He's a position coach. I think he has what it takes.
Sometimes you just kind of know with a guy, and I haven't done a deep dive on him in any way, but based on your comments there, I'll take a look at him and do a little research because, you know, I like to kind of know who's up and coming once we get to the off season and we start having conversations about, you know, who's in that coaching cycle meta, you know. Who would you? So this is. I had Veach at number 6 behind. Obviously, we had Howie Roseman number 1. Monster offseason for the Eagles. A lot of trades, a lot of signings that have worked out very well. The draft class is minimal, but really built for the future. We had Joe Douglas very highly as well. Very good draft class. Pulling in Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, those guys. We had John Schneider from the Seahawks at number 3. Really tremendous draft class based on just the rookies and the haul that he got for Russell Wilson. Also, which you are reaping the benefits of right now as well. Also, a very, very nice class. And I think at that point, you can kind of start talking about some other guys. We had Eric DaCosta at 4 and and then Chris Greer from the Dolphins. That one is a little interesting because they used a ton of assets to accumulate the players that they have, and you kind of expect major success when they've done that, but it's worked. So we had him there. And then I had Veach at 6, and but because Nick had Shane a little bit higher, Joe Shane ended up bumping Veach out of that conversation. But he was right there for me. I liked what he's done. If you could pick one single rookie that's been the most impactful, who would you consider that to be?
Oh man, that's tough because they've all really had just such an impact at different times. I guess I'll go with George Karlaftis. I think he's been very consistently impactful. I know Chiefs fans might disagree because he has like a half a sack on the season, but I think he's done a lot more. If you go to the tape, you look at the pressures, you look at the fact that he's leading the league in passes batted at the line of scrimmage, his effort. And his stops, I think he has handful of stops in the run game as well. I think he's been what they've needed in the rotation this year. I don't think he's necessarily been like that alpha that you kind of hope for when you get like the first round pick, but I think he's been probably the most consistent out of any of the Chiefs draft picks. And I'll go on to talk about probably the most disappointing has been Sky Moore. I think I don't think anyone would argue that. He's a group of 5 receiver. All right, he's coming from Western Michigan. His talent is very clear. Like he's had flashes. You've seen his route running and the things that that everyone was very high on when he was coming out of college. But there's a clear adjustment that he's going through in the mental part of the game, and we've heard about it a few times. I can't remember off the top of my head which game it was, but there was an interception that Patrick Mahomes threw, and he wanted Moore to run a route after seeing the leverage of the defender. He assumed he was going to run the route a different way than he did, maybe a little bit sharper, and he threw the ball to a spot where he expected the receiver to be, and the receiver wasn't there. And sure enough, interception. But it's stuff like that he's going to have to learn kind of on the fly here, and that he is learning on the fly here. And, I think it's going to take more time than Chiefs fans expected for a second round receiver. And I think the Chiefs did him a bit of a disservice a little bit by putting him in the starting punt return role. And he hadn't done that before, right?
It's a lot.
He returned 1 punt in college. So he was kind of learning that on the fly too. And I think the fact that he wasn't finding success there, he had a couple fumbles and whatnot, I think that was also impacting, his ability and what he was able to accomplish on offense. Now that he is kind of off of punt return, they have Kadarius Toney there. He's on the hands team still, but I think, that's probably something that he can still grasp and do. I think you're going to see him slowly but surely start to, grasp the offense a little bit better and make some more plays there.
It's tough. We have a lot of expectations of rookies coming out, but when you have players who are exceptionally physically gifted, a lot of times they can rely on that a little bit more when they come out. The nuance of route running and leverages and releases, that's something that takes time, even for the best of the players who start. I mean, very, very, very few guys are Justin Jefferson out the gate, right? Even good receivers take a little time. I mean, Garrett Wilson is incredibly physically gifted for the Jets. He took a few minutes, coming out to really be consistent, and he was able to rely on some of his traits early, getting the ball and just making moves. Sky Moore is not without physical talent, but he's a different kind of player. He relies more on the route running to be effective in the type of role that he has. So it's not surprising to me that he's not dominating right out of the gate. And, one of the reasons that I am a really big fan of what Brett Veach has done this offseason is because he set up his team to not have to rely on those guys. He made a lot of offseason additions with not top-end players, but effective players, and they built themselves depth at the receiver position, obviously led by Travis Kelce being a tight end. Doesn't matter. He's still the number 1 receiver. But, with Juju Smith-Schuster returning Mecole Hardman, bringing in
Borquez.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Yes, again, they built
Marquez.
themselves.
I'll tell you.
Marquez.
Don't call him Marquez. He's gonna get you.
I got you. Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that heads up. But before we dive into this game officially, the last thing to say, the one thing I do not like about the Chiefs is, maybe I'm just old school, but it still drives me crazy to see Isaiah Pacheco in 10 and Sky Moore in 24. I don't like it. I don't like it.
It's so weird. It's so weird. No, I New Jersey rules. Let it happen. Confuse the defense. But I'll say this. I mean, and you kind of mentioned with Travis Kelce still being the number one guy. That's one of the reasons I'm not like super concerned going into this week with Mecole Hardman out and Juju Smith-Schuster out. This offense still runs through Travis Kelce, and even though they limited Kelce a bit this first week, I mean, the Chiefs know how to use that. They know how to use Kelce effectively, not only as a weapon but as a decoy to free up other players. And I think that this week you're gonna see a lot of that. You're gonna see Kelce kind of taking one for the team at times, and to free up guys like Kadarius Toney, free up guys like other tight end Noah Gray, free up guys like Jody Fortson, free up guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and so on and so forth. And that's been also the thing that's so impressive to me. They made this offense, they structured it so that it is so deep. I mean, right now they have 10 different receivers with a touchdown this season. I think it leads the NFL. And they've proven, in my opinion, that they can win no matter who is on the field, whichever one of their weapons, however, they want to go about it, whether they want to go, 3 tight end sets and then flex them all out wide and throw to them, or 3 tight end sets, run the ball, whether they want to spread it out with their receivers and whatnot and do that. I mean, they're built to attack defenses in a number of different ways. And going into this game, you're looking at the Chiefs, you're like, okay, this is a passing offense, right? Like these guys are gonna come out and throw the ball, but they're built right now where they could, if they wanted to, come out and have a run heavy game plan against a Chargers team that's, the bottom, I think they're bottom 6, bottom 5 in the league in rush defense. So I do think that, they have different ways that they can beat you offensively. And I think kind of as the season progresses, we're going to see more of that. I don't think we've seen it reach kind of its final form so much yet this season.
Yeah, well, what I love is that they basically looked at how defenses were playing them with all of these, too high shells, whether it's cover 2 or cover 4, and they're like, okay, well, fine, if that's how you're going to do it, then we'll just move on from our deep threat and just get a bunch of guys who can just catch the ball underneath, and we'll just do that all day on you. So we'll either run it on you if you leave the box too open, or we'll just, throw it all around your linebackers and force them to try and tackle in space. So again, the difference between what the Packers did moving on from their big-time target and what the Chiefs did moving on from their big-time target is they left themselves Travis Kelce, obviously, but they also reintroduced a bunch of much, much cheaper guys with experience, because if you're relying on a great quarterback and a good offensive line, you still need guys who get where they need to go on time. And the Packers didn't do that. There's a ton of inexperience there. I mean, they have Cobb and they have Lazard who are back, but outside of that, they're relying on a lot of very young players.
It's kind of the whole thing's kind of interesting to me. Just when you look at, the Chiefs are building this out for long term, but also in the kind of immediacy. And it feels like the Packers, like they should have been going all in, knowing that, hey, like Aaron Rodgers is probably out of here after this next year. I feel like there should have been some more urgency there instead of simply building for the future by, drafting some of these young guys that, they didn't even really invest like a high draft pick into the receiver position. I think Watson
was a top 40 pick. So
Watson was. Okay,
yeah. But, the thing about the Packers is that if you go back to 2019, when they brought in Matt LaFleur and things were kind of turning over, they looked at the age of Aaron Rodgers and they said, this is a final window we have. And they spent in free agency like they hadn't before, and was really against their MO. They spent a lot of money on Preston Smith, on Zadarius Smith, on Adrian Amos, and I forget that there's a couple other guys in that spending spree as well.
Right.
Might have been an offensive guy. It was a few years ago, but they went in on that, and it went really well. 2019 went well, 2020 went well, and then 2021 went pretty well, playoffs aside. So they kind of never moved on from those pieces in time to give themselves salary cap flexibility. They tried to draft a quarterback with they had a clear plan. They did, but they deviated from that plan. And I think that they put themselves in a difficult situation because Aaron Rodgers came off the 2 MVP seasons. And it's tough. I'm a little less critical of them than I think other people are, just because they did have a plan, which I think was a good plan. And it just didn't go how they expected, and sometimes that's just the way that it is. So we got to see how they manage to work around it, but I'm not going to come down as hard on some other people. But that doesn't change the fact that I think the Chiefs had a very good plan and have executed it, and it's basically going as they wanted to. But, for this specific game, the Chiefs are favored. That should be -5.5. Hey, Noah, if you could switch that to Chiefs -5.5 versus Chargers +5.5, I'd appreciate that.
Hey, they don't mind being underdogs either.
But yeah, so in terms of the specific matchup, with these receivers back coming for that's the big story, right? Because they're both coming back tonight on primetime. How do you expect, and I know you were just praising the Chiefs defensive backs, how do you expect them to handle the return of Mike Williams, thank you, Noah, and the return of Keenan Allen in this offense? Because it changes a lot. Yeah, I think Keenan Allen particularly changes a lot.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. I think Keenan Allen, he's going to be the one to watch, being that he's been out for so long and had the hamstring issue and whatnot. How close is he truly 100%, or are they kind of rushing guys back because this is a big game? That's what I want to find out. And he's going against L'Jarius Sneed in the slot. He's going to be going against him quite a bit. And Sneed has been kind of limited by a knee issue the past couple of weeks. He didn't look right last week, in my opinion, but he was still out there playing. So, against a savvy vet like Keenan Allen, someone who, is a really good receiver when he's healthy. If he truly is healthy, I think that could be a matchup that could be a problem for Kansas City. Quietly, I think that, them potentially not having Everett, the tight end, he was downgraded to questionable. I think that could be something that ends up coming into play in the passing game, not having that threat. Having Keenan Allen back is helpful there, but, not having that short threat, being able to line him up in line, that might end up being tough, especially they've got I know that Salyer, the backup left tackle for the Chargers. I know that he's done a good job for the Rashawn Slater, but I just want to see, against a pass rush that's really hot right now. I want to see, it. I want to see him match up against these guys and see what he can do, because that could be a key matchup as well.
Yeah, he's held up well. I mean, considering I think he was a 4th round rookie, if I remember right, 4th round, I think.
Yeah,
we talked about him earlier.
Georgia Bulldog, right? I mean, those guys, he's seen success. He knows what it looks like. So
right,
I have no doubt that he's going to battle, but let's see it, man. Let's see it against the Chiefs.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that they rushed Keenan Allen back, because I think if they were going to rush him back last week on primetime, probably would have been when that happened. So I'm optimistic. And look, I'm not a Chiefs fan, so I want to see him out there. I want to see that matchup. You know what I mean? I want to see him get back to it. So I love Keenan Allen, man. He's a fun guy to watch. So, I'm still definitely going to pick the Chiefs to win. I got to consider the spread a little bit. But if we're flipping over to the Chiefs offense, I mean, this is an underwhelming defense, and I don't really think there's any two ways that you could spin that for the Chargers. Their big signing at corner, J.C. Jackson, he just hasn't worked out. And there were rumblings about what he might do once he left New England. And I think that's why, even though he was performing as one of the best corners in football, he got a lesser contract than a lot of those top guys. I don't want to say that the story on him is written, but obviously underwhelming, plus injuries. Looks like he's done for the year now, I think. So that stinks. They still have a very good corner in Asante Samuel Jr., who I love. They still have Derwin James, and
I believe Bosa's out for this one. He's on IR, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So that's a tough loss too. I mean, that was one of the things about that first matchup that was so deadly for Kansas City is that they just don't have great tackle play. And, Khalil Mack's still incredible in his own right. But I do think that, that in not having those bookends to be able to, just tee off against Patrick Mahomes, that's going to make things a little bit difficult for this defense because they're not going to just be able to really rush forward and get pressure all the time now. I think they're going to have to throw in some blitzes. And Patrick Mahomes, we know how deadly he is against the blitz. So,
all right. Well, coming up here soon, we're going to have Jess Root, managing editor for Cardinals Wire, and Kyle Madson, managing editor for Niners Wire. I should say Cards Wire. And we'll have them in just a sec. So let's go ahead and pick
my colleagues, my lieges.
This is this is a Wire Network heavy episode.
Oh.
So let's go ahead and pick this game. Chargers plus 5.5 at home. Do you think the Chiefs cover the spread? Do you think the Chargers backdoor cover? I mean, I think we've gathered from what you've said so far that you think the Chiefs are probably going to win. Yep. What are your final thoughts?
I do think the Chiefs, they haven't covered in a minute. I do think they cover this week. I'll tell you the reason why. I mean, yes, the Chargers do have Mike Williams, Keenan Allen coming back, but they haven't scored more than 23 points since week 4. Week 4. Yeah, week 4.
Mm-hmm.
Their offensive issues are not just the receivers. I think that their offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, is kind of at fault for certain things. And I think that they're going to be kind of feeling that a little bit this week, even integrating these new receivers back into the lineup. And, the Chiefs, look, man, I'm not a superstitious guy. Chiefs are wearing their white on white uniforms. All right. They haven't scored less than 34 points wearing those uniforms with Patrick Mahomes. All right. 51 points against the Rams in 2018. I don't even know. They crushed the Raiders in 2021. And the last game they were wearing them was against the Chargers, I believe, week 15 last season, white on white uniforms. And that was, I think, a 34-point win. So I'm going to go against it. I'm going to say 33-24 Chiefs win against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football.
Look, if you want to talk about being superstitious, last week I dropped that any time a team has been represented on our show to preview Thursday Night Football, they were 6 of 8, so 6-2, and they are now 7-2. So they are. Yeah,
I'm remembering that for next time the Chiefs are on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah. So whatever that means, but I'm going to take the Chargers only because I'm just going to rely on some fireworks from Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert to make a show of it. I do think the Chiefs will win. I think the Chargers will get the backdoor cover. So that's my official pick for.
I will say for that, Gavino has been telling me that I think he said it to me twice now. He's like, Brandon Staley, since he's been coaching this Chargers team, it's always been a 1-score game between the Chiefs and the Chargers. So
yeah, and it's a divisional game, so it'll be close. And yeah, I am fine with being wrong. I'm just gonna give the Chargers one last real breath. But Charles, I appreciate you so much coming on as always. Please, until the next time everybody sees you here, let them know where they can find your work and your social media as well.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, assuming that it still survives past the Elon days here, at GoldMCT NFL. You can also follow me at the Chiefs Wire on Twitter. I run that account as well. You can find my writing at chiefswire.usatoday.com. We have our podcast, the Chiefs Wire podcast, which you can find streaming everywhere, Apple, Spotify, what have you. And you can also find my work at KC Sports Network. I run their daily newsletter during the week. So Monday through Friday, you can subscribe for free, get a nice little Chiefs newsletter every day.
Beautiful. As always, a man of many outlets. Charles, thanks again, and we will see you soon.
Take care.
All right, let's bring on Jess Root and Kyle Madson. Gentlemen, first time appearances. I appreciate you coming on. Jess is the managing editor for Cards Wire. Kyle is the managing editor for Niners Wire, and they are here to preview Monday Night Football. Normally we do that Monday, but we decided to slide it in on the Sunday live stream because we're going to have a conversation with George Bremer about the Colts tomorrow in that normal slot. Jess, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. Kyle, how are you today?
I was good until I found out that I was going to be super underdressed. Dang, Jess.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to go shirt and tie.
Yeah, well, look,
I've got church in a couple hours, so.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad we caught you before, man. That's is good timing. All right, guys. So you are new to the show. I kind of let you know, but what we do here is we talk about the team seasons at large. I have not had a guest on to preview a Cardinals or 49ers game so far. So I want to get what your thoughts are on the teams kind of as they stand, and then we'll talk about this actual matchup. So we'll talk about the Cardinals first here. Cardinals were a team with expectations. They signed their GM, they signed the quarterback, they signed the coach, all 2 extensions. They made a trade with their first-round pick to bring in another receiver to kind of fill the void of DeAndre Hopkins until he got back. And they, by all accounts, believed themselves to be real contenders after going to the playoffs last year. Obviously, the record isn't necessarily what they would have hoped, what a lot of Cardinals fans would have hoped. But what is the status of the team? What are the vibes? Do you think the players are frustrated? I mean, obviously losing, you're frustrated, but how deep does that run? Do you think they have an opportunity to turn it around? Do you feel like the season's kind of lost at this point? Give me your, inner knowledge of the Cardinals, Jess.
Well, considering that the Cardinals entered this year expecting to compete for the playoffs, they wanted to build off last year's wild card appearance, a year in which they started 7-0 and 10-2, and it's been highly disappointed. It's just been mistake after mistake, little mistakes that have led to a 4-6 record. They are unhappy with how things have gone, but at the same time, the one thing you haven't noticed is they haven't given up on the season. Now, luckily, the NFC is a mess, and so while even though they went 0-2 against the Seahawks, the division isn't necessarily out of the question, but probably.
It's only 2 games,
right? But the wild card is completely wide open because the NFC is. I don't know if you want to call it garbage or just very competitive, inconsistently competitive. The fact that if the Cardinals beat the 49ers, they will tie them in wins, be a half game back. And really, they are very much, as long as they win, they will definitely be in position to compete for a wild card game, berth down the stretch, at least. But the season has just been frustration after frustration because they've never been able to get things going. The offense, which was supposed to be the strength, the belief entering this year that this was a Super Bowl caliber offense. And between injuries and negative plays and mistakes and penalties and drops and not having DeAndre Hopkins for 6 games, it has just been very inconsistent. The defense played pretty well after the Chiefs game from there on, but then kind of has slipped over aside from last week for about 3 games, and the defense dipped down to where they were second to last in points allowed, only allowing 2.5 points fewer than the Lions' atrocious, the defense that we consider an atrocious defense. And so they'd never had both sides of the ball playing well at the same time this year.
Yeah, it's been tough. I think the defensive and offensive fronts have been one of the biggest factors in that. They haven't really reinforced either of those in a way that I think would have kept them as competitive as they would have liked to be. Kyle, as a division, as a coverage man for a division rival, not necessarily in this game specifically, but what is your outsider take on the Cardinals as they stand at this point?
I genuinely have no idea because I think Cliff Kingsbury is kind of a disaster. I'm out on Cliff entirely, but I'm in on DeAndre Hopkins. I think Kyler Murray's a good player. I feel like, to me, okay, let me back this up. The Cardinals always play the Niners tough, whether the Niners are good and the Cardinals are good, or vice versa, or one's bad and the other's not. So I always think the Cardinals have a chance to like just go on a run and win some games and make the playoffs. I just don't see it this year. They're banged up on the offensive line, and I just don't think there's from an outsider's point of view, that friction between Cliff and Kyler seems like kind of a really big deal. And I just don't know if they can get beyond that.
So as the final point on the Cardinals, Jess, what is your take on Cliff Kingsbury and how he's done in the potential relationship between quarterback and head coach at this point?
Honestly, the relationship between the two is fine. The two are very competitive. Kyler, now the what we've seen, the outbursts, it's very interesting because of the narrative that there is about Murray. Like because he wasn't emotional and fiery, people were upset about that because then he'd be salty on the sidelines. But now that he's fired up and yelling at the head coach and this and that,
you can't win. Yeah.
No, honestly, there's no way around it. But what it is the two of them have a fantastic relationship and have since Kyler was 15 years old. Kyler gets very frustrated at mistakes that happen on the field. He's incredibly competitive. Like the one outburst, if we go back to, I think it was a Thursday night football game where he said, "Calm the F down." It was a case where Cliff offensively didn't trust that things were going to end. Kyler had it under control. He said, "I've got this. Calm down. I've got this. Let me do my thing." And it's been a case that year for Kyler is that he's been, I think he wants to do more and whatever the game plan is, but at least the relationship, there is no problem with the relationship between Cliff and Kyler. There are disagreements about the football between the two of them. But the Kingsbury dynamic is interesting this year because his extension hasn't even started. And so would they pull the plug after this year? I could see it, but by and large, he is well liked by his locker room. The question, and they haven't stopped playing for him. The question is whether they believe in him and his offensive scheme. And everything we've ever heard suggests that is the case, but I don't know. It's a mess.
It's interesting that they have to operate this season under the microscope of Hard Knocks. It's a tough season to do it. It'll be a fun one if they do manage to turn it around. That will be a very fun story to see. But it's tough, man. It's tough when you already have so many eyes on you, and now when you have cameras behind the scenes, like I would never want to be a team that signs up for Hard Knocks in season. Doing it in the off season is tough enough as it is. But yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of quarterbacks who clap back at their coaches, and a lot of times it's deemed fine. Nobody cares. But Kyler has a specific narrative that surrounds him. So pretty much anything he does is going to be fit into that narrative. It's true. It really is true. And I don't know him that well. I mean, I think Cardinals are not a team that I have done a deep dive on in terms of, in some of the roster building I have, but in terms of like the personalities there, not as much. So I don't claim to be an expert there. But let's transition over to the 49ers. The Niners are a team that has an interesting season going on in their own way. They made they made the major move to go up and get Trey Lance. They let him sit for a season, which is, fine, normal. And then they expect him to be the starter. He gets hurt very early in the year. Fortunately, they still have Garoppolo waiting in the wings. But because of some inconsistent play early this year, they have no idea what they have in him going forward. And he also doesn't get that built-in experience no matter how it went. So he's still coming in pretty raw as a third-year player. So they have to deal with that once the offseason arrives. This year, they have a championship caliber defense. They have a team that is loaded offensively. a good offensive line, maybe not quite as good as last year, but a ton of playmakers. Another step up from Brandon Ayuk. They make the trade for Christian McCaffrey. They're getting contributions from Juwan Jennings. Kittle has been healthier this year than he's been in the past. They've got a lot going for them right now. And my thing has always been, I understand why they made that trade, because Jimmy Garoppolo will always give you a ceiling, and he'll probably give you somewhat of a floor as well that you're kind of comfortable with, but you want that ceiling to compete. So when you're looking at the team at large, probably not quite as many wins as you would like, but again, they're in a wild card spot right now. So what is your take on the 49ers, Kyle?
I think the first, what has it been, 10 weeks? 9 weeks? It was the bye?
this is
9
week
weeks?
11
The first
now.
9 weeks, I think it's going to, I think they're going to be viewed kind of as an aberration down the stretch. Like, I think if they played the Bears again, they beat them. I think if they play the Broncos again, they beat them.
Yeah, that was a crazy game against the Bears.
That was wild.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure they would beat the Cardinals, the Cardinals, but the Falcons, if they played them again, I think the Falcons play a style that is not conducive to San Francisco necessarily beating them. But you're right about Jimmy Garoppolo giving them a ceiling, and that's why, like, they sit here at 5-4, and I hear people put them in the conversation like, oh, this is a Super Bowl contender in the NFC. They might be up with the 8-1 Vikings. And it's like, maybe, but that to me is based largely on last year and the fact they started 3-5 and then went on a run. They go 7-2 to finish the year. I think people are looking and going, this is largely that same group. They're just going to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And because of Jimmy and because of the injury factor, which always kind of looms with them, although it's better now, it's hard to just be like, oh yeah, they're just going to pencil them in for 12-5. That's how it's going to go. I can't do that because that's all based on last year. Like, they beat the heck out of the Rams before the bye, but fine. Like, they beat the Rams all the time anyways. Plus, I think this Rams team stinks. So great. You beat the heck out of a bad Rams team. And then you get the bye and you come off the bye and you're facing the Chargers without Rashawn Slater and without Keenan Allen and without Mike Williams and no Joey Bosa and no JC Jackson, and beat them 22-16 in a game where they never really felt like they had control. And that's fine. I think Brandon Staley's a good coach who makes bad decisions sometimes, but it's not so much that they only scored 22 points and won by 6, but it was just like, man, they just didn't feel like they were definitely the better team. And that's concerning going into a stretch where it's like, man, if you can't beat the heck out of that Chargers team, how are you going to beat the Cardinals? You play twice. You got to play the Seahawks. You got to play the Dolphins. Like, that's where it's hard to start being like, oh yeah, they're just going to stack wins.
Yeah. I think my takeaway from that Sunday night game, among others, but one of the biggest, was the disparity in quarterback play is pretty enormous in this game. It's just true. And I don't have anything against Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's made a great career for himself. He's been to a bunch of championship games. He's been to a Super Bowl. The issue is just that, great, as a staff, front office, you found guys who you can work with, guys who can get the ball short, whether it's at or behind the line of scrimmage or just past it, and they do all the work. And that's great. And yes, as my co-host Kyron pointed out, Patrick Mahomes leads the league, or led the league last year or something, with passes at or behind the line of scrimmage. But also he throws way more passes than Jimmy Garoppolo. So that number is a little bit skewed. So it would be nice if you had those guys who could do all that, but a lot of those guys can threaten you deep as well. And so it would be nice to be able to do that on a more consistent basis and force teams to play you a little bit differently defensively. Jess, same question as I asked Kyle earlier about being an outsider within the division. What is your perception of the 49ers right now?
I see a team that is, well, I look at the last several years and Kyle Shanahan and his success with Jimmy Garoppolo and his lack of success with pretty much anybody else at quarterback. And you can see why they why they made it so hard to get rid of him and then ended up needing him. They're a dangerous team, but you know that they're in regular season. you feel like they're a dangerous team to play because they have the defensive pieces. They have really good offensive pieces, really, with the weakness being their quarterback. Because if you look at the running back situation with McCaffrey and Mitchell, that's fantastic. You've got Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. You've got weapons galore, and then you've got Jimmy Garoppolo, who is he's a pretty good quarterback that's going to do well, but he needs more to win like big games. But in terms of when you're facing the team in a regular season, they're always a challenging team to face. They have their run scheme is very difficult to defend. Basically, the only way you can really defend their run is get a lead. Because they run the ball that well. If you can get a lead on them, which is hard to do with the pass rush and the second, if they've got really good players at each level of the defense, which makes them a very difficult team to play. But then you see how they play against some teams, and you're like, wait, what? Like, again, Falcons loss, Bears loss, and the Broncos loss. You're like, why? Entering this year, I was down on the Niners, not because of their talent, but because they were going to lean on Trey Lance. With Jimmy Garoppolo, you know what type of team you have. You have a playoff caliber team that could be Super Bowl caliber if Jimmy's playing his best stuff. But now that it's back to that, I mean, they're definitely in the mix, but they play somewhat inconsistently enough that you feel you have a chance, like in the Cardinals situation. Plus the Cardinals, like the Cardinals and the 49ers, it's just a circle of suck when it comes to teams beating up each other for some reason.
Yeah, well, that happens in the division a lot. With any in-division games, that is a noticeable trend. I think when you look at the 49ers, they made a calculated decision. Everything, is a calculated risk and investment in the NFL. And they allowed some key pieces to go in free agency and retirement. Alex Mack and Laken Tomlinson both were good players for them last year and part of that run. When you bring in Trey Lance and he brings in that extra number in the running game, then you can kind of let your offensive line be a little bit less effective because you force a defense to have an extra man to cover that extra runner built in with Trey Lance. Once you lost that, they don't have quite the same dominant offensive line that they did last year. They've relied on some younger guys to try and make that happen. They still have Trent on one side. McGlinchey's been hurt a lot. I think he's back right now on the right side, if I remember right. And so they have tackles, but the interior is not what it was last year. And without Trey Lance to kind of change the numbers, I think that's hurt them a little bit. And again, it's just a calculated risk. Last question before we get into the actual game itself. Kyle, how do you feel about the offensive line and its performance so far this season?
So it was kind of funny. I was just talking to some people about this the other day. If you had told me or asked me to place where they ranked on like PFF's 1 through 32 offensive lines, I would have been like, oh, they're probably in the like 18 to 20 range. They're number 8. And I don't get it. Trent Williams, obviously a really good player. Aaron Banks has been better at left guard than I thought he would be. Second-year player from Notre Dame, second-round pick last year. But Jake Brendel at center is a little bit of a disaster sometimes. They're rotating Spencer Burford, a 4th-round rookie, and Daniel Brunskill, a journeyman veteran, at right guard. Like rotating them at right guard, like on purpose. And Kyle Shanahan got asked about this, and he was like, oh, yeah, rotate defensive linemen. Why not just rotate offensive linemen? It's like, because they're bad, dude. Because you can't find which one is better. Like, that's a problem. And then Mike McGlinchey.
That's a funny answer.
Mike McGlinchey is a like, he just draws the ire of 49ers Twitter all the time. And it's because for 50 plays, he might be really good for 44 of them. But there's 6 plays where he's going to be a traffic cone. And with Jimmy Garoppolo, we talk about that ceiling. There's also a much smaller margin of error. And so every sack, every throwaway or interception or play that gets broken by the guy rushing over Mike McGlinchey's side, blowing up the play, it feels like the end of the world. So I think the perception is much worse on Mike McGlinchey than it is, which is why I think I would have ranked them a lot lower. But in reality, he's a decent starting right tackle, like a above average starting right tackle, I think. Save for those handful of plays a game where it's like, what are you doing on that play? You just whiffed. So yeah, I think their offensive line's been fine. The issue is when they get into a postseason situation where they're facing a very good Eagles defensive line or Aaron Donald. In the Super Bowl, it was Chris Jones just crushing Mike Person at right guard. It kind of took that game over. So that's where my concern with the 49ers offensive line lies. I don't think it's going to be the reason they can't go on a run to, either win the division, make the playoffs, whatever it is. But in a one game sample, it's like, man, there's a chance this offensive line gets eaten alive.
Yeah, you would like it to be more dominant when Jimmy Garoppolo is your guy.
Yes.
I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think a lot of the ire about Mike McGlinchey just comes from the fact that he's a first-round pick versus a second or third. Sometimes the expectations are just different when that's the case. So, all right, that will basically sum up the conversation about the teams. And because I have both of you on, I want to do it in this way to talk about the game. Jess, first I'm going to ask you, what would be the keys to success and a potential win for the Cardinals and the potential primary hole or leaky spot or whatever the case may be that you feel the 49ers could exploit to come away with the win?
I think first and foremost, the way the Cardinals can when they need to get a lead early, they might have their best three receivers on the field together for the first time this season. We've been waiting all year for Hopkins and Hollywood, but Hollywood got hurt literally the last play of the last game before Hopkins came back. And so it's been Hollywood or Hopkins, both. Hollywood's been fantastic this season and looked like a true number one. So if Hopkins and Hollywood are both, now Hopkins is questionable. Technically Brown is still on IR, but I believe he's tracking to be activated on Monday. Add that to Rondale Moore. If that passing game can get going, if they score early and get a lead, I think that is really the only way that they're going to be able to do that. I think the passing game has the potential to be good. The issue is if they don't get a lead early, they are not equipped to hold up against the run that consistently. Last year when the Cardinals got up, I think it was the McCoy game, one of the two is, and the Niners only rushed for like 36 yards against the Cardinals. But again, the reason was they were playing from behind in that game. And so the Cardinals, to be able to defend the run, need to build a lead so that they don't have to defend the run. Other than that, if the Cardinals play even, and they've been prone to mistakes, they've been able to move the ball pretty well this year. The problem is San Francisco's defense is not letting people score. They're not letting people move the ball. So the Cardinals have to be flawless, because if they don't, they're going to get behind, and then the combination of McCaffrey and Mitchell is just going to be too much.
Yeah. I mean, not only would playing with the lead make it easier to defend the run, it also would mean that they can mitigate a little bit of the pass rush that is so good for the 49ers. Eric Armstead is out.
And the Cardinals have four starters gone on the offensive line. DJ Humphries is out. Their three interior starters are all on injured reserve. So it's going to be Kelvin Beachum and a bunch of guys you probably not heard of.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Kyle, same question. The primary pathway to success for this game, and where do you think that the Cardinals could the Cardinals could potentially exploit the 49ers if that were to come to pass?
I mean, Jess just said it. If the Niners can get a lead and grind the clock a little bit, I think that's kind of their best route. That said, when the 49ers turn the ball over, they are a disaster. And that's my biggest concern. The Cardinals will take the ball away a little bit. And Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't thrown an interception in 2 consecutive games. It's looked really good. And it's like, man, if this goes, because last year, the Colt McCoy game in Levi Stadium, the Niners fumbled on their second possession that led to a Cardinals touchdown. The Cardinals score again, and the Niners were driving and going into score, and they fumbled again, and the Cardinals went down and went up 17-0, and it was kind of off the rails from there. So that's something the Niners can't do on Monday night. I don't think they're going to cover either way. I think 8 is a ton of points, so I don't think the Niners cover. But if they can just play from ahead, where they're not relying on Jimmy Garoppolo, who's been good in like big spots on Sunday night, he was really good in like some key third and longs, and that's great. But it's not something that I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. Like let Jimmy drop back and throw it 45 times. That's the way to win. The Niners just have to get behind. The Niners just have to get behind their run game, whether it's Elijah Mitchell, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, and let Jimmy Garoppolo operate from second and manageable, third and manageable. Like that's where they're going to create some explosive plays. So if they can do that, stay on the field on third down and convert their red zone trips to touchdowns. That's the other thing. They went to the red zone 5 times against the Chargers and walked away with 2 touchdowns. If they do that against the Cardinals, like as good as the Niners defense has been, they've given up 13 points a game in games where their defense has been, for the most part, healthy. So that takes away the Falcon game where they're missing their entire starting defensive line, and then the Chiefs game where they just got rolled. They're giving up 13 points a game. But that said, Jess just mentioned all the weapons the Cardinals have. And the Niners secondary outside of Trevarius Ward has been a little bit shaky. So if you told me there were 3 or 4 kind of explosive plays from the Cardinals offense, whether it's Colt McCoy or Kyler Murray, I wouldn't be super shocked. So I think if the Niners get a lead, I think that they'll be fine for the most part. I just don't think they're going to cover. 8 is they haven't blown somebody out in a long time. It's somebody who's not the Rams. So
yeah, I
Cardinals
think my next question was going to be to both of you guys. What do you think the final is versus the spread? So we got your answer, Kyle, that the 49ers. I'm guessing you're saying the Cardinals backdoor cover. Is that your prediction?
No, I think the Cardinals are like in the game.
Okay.
And the Niners are just kind of like, maybe the Niners are up 5 or maybe the Niners are up like 3 or 4 and they kick a field goal late or something, and it looks like a what's the word I'm looking for? Difference. It looks like they beat them by more than they really did.
Okay.
Like 27-21, something like that.
Okay. All right. And we talk about margin for error, and I think as low as the 49ers margin for error, that's exactly how high the Cardinals margin for error is, because they can go to the house on any play. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, he can score on a Hail Mary because those hands are absolutely ridiculous. If Marquise Brown is back, he can take it to the house. Kyler Murray can take it to the house himself on any given play. And so you can have a turnover because you can turn around and score. Now, that's not necessarily a recipe for success, but it is something that they have in their tool bag that the 49ers don't necessarily. Sure, one of those guys can make a big play, but their style of play is much more controlled, doesn't give them as many opportunities to score on explosive plays. So, Jess, real quick, do you think the Cardinals cover or even outright win this game?
I can't predict with how the season's gone that the Cardinals will up. I think they can win the game. I don't think they will. I won't predict that, but I do think it'll be a competitive game. I think for a lot of reasons. I think the return of the potential return of Hollywood Brown to that offense will be good. I think if Kyler Murray plays, and I'm thinking about 75% sure Kyler plays, that it will be a competitive game, 24-20, 49ers win. It'll be close. With Colt McCoy, there's a lot more variance. I think that with McCoy in there, because he operates really well if everything stays on schedule. And we saw things go sideways against Carolina last year. He's really good at keeping things on schedule, but if anything happens, he's not the guy that can bring you out of that hole. So if McCoy starts, I could see the same type of result, but it could also go sideways really quickly if he gets hit and he fumbles the ball. But I'm going to go with the prediction I've gone since I wrote the preview for Sports Weekly last weekend, and that's a 24-20 49ers win.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Cardinals to cover here. I'm operating under the assumption that Kyler Murray will play. I think the issues with the offensive line and all the injuries are probably too much for Colt McCoy to overcome. So picking this game now, it kind of relies on something we don't know for sure, and that's Kyler's availability. But assuming he's in, I will take the Cardinals to cover, 49ers to win. I'm excited to see Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray all together. They're not going to have Zach Ertz, which does kind of stink, but having both of those receivers with Kyler Murray will at least make it an interesting game to watch, which is as much as you can ask for as a fan if you're not specifically invested in the Cardinals or the 49ers. All right, guys, that'll do it today. I appreciate you very, very much for coming on and previewing this game with me. First time appearances, let everybody know where they can find you and your work and, of course, your social media. Jess?
Cardswire.com is where I write. Rise Up See Red is the podcast where I talk. And on Twitter, you can find me at Senor Jess Root, Senor, my name, Jess Root.
Beautiful. All right. And Kyle, same question. Let everybody know where they can find you and your work. And you, I think you do a show as well, right?
Yeah. You can find me at NinersWire.com. You can check out the podcast, Candlestick Chronicles. That's on wherever you get your pods. And I'm on Twitter, but don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. It's Kyle A. Madson, Madson.
Kyle's hilarious, by the way. Just in case
No,
he's hilarious.
Hilarious, doing a lot of heavy lifting. Yeah, no, that's the Twitter.
All right. Awesome. It's been a very, very fun show. I was super pumped to get you guys on and talk about two teams that we hadn't really focused on yet. So thanks again. And guys, tomorrow's show, I will be recapping Week 11 of the NFL with Kyron Samuels, and we're going to have Max Chadwick from PFF to talk about the college football update as we near the end of that season. And then, again, George Bremner from the Herald. God, the Noah, help me out here. I'm struggling. It's been a 2-hour show. The Herald. I'm dying here. This is an awesome way to end an awesome show. Really awesome.
Hey, the good
Herald
news
Bulletin. My Lord, that was a struggle. I am sorry, guys. That was a brutal end to the show. So, yes, George Brenner from the Herald Bulletin to cover the Colts, and we'll find out how they do today, but we just want to talk about the Jeff Saturday hire and kind of how that's going. So that'll do it, and we will see you guys all very soon.